All right, so welcome to this special edition here of the We Are Family podcast. This is just me, Pirate Peyton, giving an instant reaction to the Steelers' 34-17 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. From the start of this game, obviously with the defensive injuries, you could tell from the start that this Steelers defense did not look the same against Lamar Jackson, the Ravens offense, as it has in the past. It's also an interesting fact about this game. This is why I kind of thought Lamar would do well. The Steelers have never played Lamar twice in a season. And obviously they made adjustments because, yes, our concerns were mainly in the secondary. And that showed today, especially you had no Dante Jackson, no Deshaun Elliott, Joey Porter out the whole game. So you're down to KZ Trice, who's barely played at all, and James Pierre. But the most concerning part of the defense today was the run defense, which has been really good. I mean, it held Saquon Barkley at 19 carries for 65 yards last week. This week, they give up 211 yards rushing against the Ravens. And Derrick Henry had a monster game. Lamar had his runs when he could. But you could tell that this defense, I mean, Russ was going to have to really step up big. This offense was going to have to step up big. And you had to not make a lot of mistakes. And the last 2 weeks, I mean, the Steelers are built on taking advantage of other teams' mistakes and not making their own mistakes. And it was even worse this week with the mistakes. 7-7 game, right? And the momentum's in our favor. We just got to stop on defense. Russ, wide open lane going down the field. And I understand where Russ was coming from. When I was watching it live, I was like, yeah, go for the end zone. Like, if I was in his shoes, like, and you're that close to the goal line, like, I'd be going for the end zone too. And I understand the competitive nature of that. Like, yes, he should have slid. Like, in hindsight, yes, he should have slid. But I feel like the real mistake here is, I understand him thinking he could juke that guy out, which he probably couldn't have. But if you see him coming downhill like that, you have to know that you might absorb a big hit. So you got to tuck that ball away. And it just, he had it tucked, but I don't think he had it tucked tight in preparation for a big hit like that. And that changed the game. It put the Steelers in a hole because it was a 14-point swing. And I was thinking to myself throughout the game, every time we do get a stop, we have to capitalize with points. And not only do we not capitalize with points, we fumble the ball, and then they go 95 yards down the field. But the Steelers, they did come back, which, they typically do. This team has shown a lot of fight this year. And the offense certainly isn't as pathetic as it used to be. So no surprise there that they came back and tied the game. Great throws to Calvin Austin, Cordero Patterson to get the game tied at 17. But then the Ravens go down and score, make it 24-17. And this is where I really feel like the Steelers shot themselves in the foot, not just by the play on the field, but the decision-making by Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith. So we get a first down or two. We're around midfield. It's 4th and 6 to start the fourth quarter. And they leave the offense out on the field. With the way our defense was playing, you don't give them short field. You don't guarantee them short field to go up 2 scores with a whole quarter left to play, number one. And if you're going to go for it there, you have to have something designed underneath that is almost guaranteed to get open. Instead, I didn't see anything over the middle. I didn't see any check down. Instead, Russ chucks it deep. And Calvin Austin, I mean, it was covered. It was contested, but it was covered. So I just think that decision was just, first of all, was absolutely terrible. And the fact that Russ chucked it deep there kind of just goes to show a big flaw in Russ's game. You know, Russ has definitely been a massive upgrade, but there is just a ceiling there. But I think it's that play shows how Arthur Smith's offense and Russell Wilson's ceiling are gonna limit this team at times. And the problem with Russ being that, you know, he's the knock on him, especially as he's gotten older and he isn't moving as well, is he holds the ball too long, doesn't take the easy throws. I think we've seen that at times with him with Russ, but you'll see like he'll take a while to throw the ball. Okay, now I'm gonna hit the check down. You know, instead of just being in rhythm. But I also think this shows, you know, Arthur Smith's lack of creativity. I've always felt that, you know, he's a competent offensive coordinator, but the creativity isn't really that great. And what really frustrates me with Arthur Smith, which we'll get to in the later part of this game, is the inability to get Pat Freiermuth involved. You know, he has some sort of love affair here with Michael Pruitt. I mean, the fact that Michael Pruitt gets about the same amount of targets like today as Pat Freiermuth is just beyond ridiculous. I think part of that falls on Russ because Russ just doesn't hit the easy throws and doesn't get the ball out quick, which is a lot of Pat Freiermuth's routes are intermediate. But I think, you know, if without George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth is your biggest threat. And where is he? I mean, a good day for Pat Freiermuth, he might have 4 to 5 targets and 2 or 3 catches. He should be getting 7 to 8 targets in most games. It's unacceptable. And to me, in the end, that falls on the offensive coordinator. You have to be more creative in getting your best target involved in the game. And so, obviously, that terrible decision to go for it on 4th down, you think, okay, the Ravens are going to go up 2 scores. And they would have, but the Steeler bullshit comes out. I don't know what happened. Rashad Bateman just stopped his route. Lamar, not the best read. Minka gets the pick, and we get a huge break. And then, this is where, again, I blame Russ, but I also blame Arthur Smith. When you seize the momentum of a game like that with that Minka Fitzpatrick interception, you got to be aggressive. And I will give Arthur Smith credit. I think during a lot of the first half, but not as much in the second half, we saw them open up the play action and passing, just the passing game in general with Russ on 1st and 2nd down, because Baltimore's defense, right, very good run defense. You know, their secondary is a little lacking. And we saw in the first Ravens-Steelers game, right, the Steelers aren't really running the ball that well against Baltimore. You gotta pass the ball to open up the run game. And I thought in the first half they did that. But going to this drive specifically, right, you seize the momentum. Okay, Russ overall, his passing for the most part was great for most of this game. Other than the interception that we're about to talk about. I mean, he was very on point, very accurate. Okay, he takes some sacks. You know, doesn't always hit the short throws like we talked about earlier. But overall, very accurate, did what he had to do. He played like a veteran quarterback for the most part. But instead of doing a play action and just doing a shotgun pass, we do a run up the middle with Najee. That goes nowhere. All right, so then you got to pass on 2nd down. But I really hate the play action on like 2nd and 10. Unless you're in shotgun, that's okay, like a little short play action. But like, no one believes you're going to run the ball on 2nd and 10, down 7, you know, with 13 minutes left, right? So they do that little bootleg tight end option. And I think, like, I like that play early on in the game, a little bootleg. But in that situation, that big of a moment, we're doing a bootleg, and Michael Pruitt is the first option. Or at least he was the option closest to Russ. He was the check down, per se. And Russ he goes out of the pocket because that's how the play is designed, and he faces some pressure. Now, again, Russ should have thrown that ball away. However, even if he completes that ball to Michael Pruitt, that gets you 1 or 2 yards? I mean, Marlon Humphrey's right there. I mean, why is Michael Pruitt, why are we running that play to begin with? I hate the play call. But again, just a bad read by Russ. Marlon Humphrey's all over it. It's a pick 6. Probably should have been 31-17 anyway, but they really did have a chance to seize the momentum and change the game. And just a bad read by Russ. Bad sequencing of play calling by Arthur Smith. But these last 2 games and this sequence of games here, 3 games in 11 days against 3 of the best football teams in the NFL. We knew this was coming down the line, and we knew that we had to do well in the games prior, and we were 10-3. Because we knew that this could be a rough stretch for the Steelers. And with the injuries, it definitely makes it a lot more difficult. But things are shaping up for the Steelers to be a 5th or 6th seed. I would hope a 5th seed, but a 5th or 6th seed. And a team that, if you go in against a Baltimore or a Houston in the playoffs, I think if we have everyone healthy, we definitely have a good chance to win that game. And that's kind of what my expectation was for this team going into the year. But it's just kind of a weird way to get there, considering you had the AFC North in your hands and you kind of let it go. But what would suck about that possible scenario is if you lose 3 of your last 4 games, or especially if you lose all 4, even if you get everyone healthy for the playoffs, I mean, momentum is a real thing. You lose your last 3 of 4, or your last 4 games of the season, that is not what a playoff team wants to have going in to the playoffs. You don't want to be cold. You don't want bad mojo going into the playoffs. You just don't want it. And if you don't win a playoff game starting the season 10-3, which it's a real possibility, that is a bad look for Mike Tomlin and just bad for the organization. And this not winning a playoff game thing, it's becoming a thing. And you don't want that monkey on your back. And the thing is, this division, it's not going to get any easier, right? The Bengals, you'd expect them, with how Joe Burrow is playing, to get their shit together, right? The Browns have a great roster. They just need to get the quarterback right. And Russ isn't getting any younger. So, and you're probably going to pay him a decent amount of money this offseason. So, this is the year you got to make some noise. You got to get this not winning a playoff thing off your back. And this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, I had a feeling that this game was going to have some significant meaning. And by not beating the Baltimore Ravens, not beating one of the Ravens or the Eagles, definitely makes this game, this is the biggest game of the season. I mean, you say that almost every week, but it really is. Because if you win this game, you're on track to win the division. Because then you'll probably, with that momentum, I would expect them to beat the Bengals in the last week of the season. Certainly no easy thing to do. But not only is this the difference between getting a home playoff game, it's also the difference between having momentum going into the playoffs and not having momentum going into the playoffs. And that's a big deal, in my opinion. But you have to beat the Chiefs, who are they always just find ways to win. And today their offense looked the best it has in a while. With Hollywood Brown back in the lineup, you have him, Hopkins, and Worthy, and Travis Kelce. They look pretty dangerous. I mean, the Texans' defense isn't elite by any means, but I mean, they're not bad. But if this Steelers defense doesn't get healthy, I mean, I think they're going to have real problems. I don't expect them to get. You would hope maybe Jackson and Ogunjobi would be back because they were limited in practice last week. But you're probably not going to have Porter now that he's hurt, apparently. And this Steelers offense is going to face arguably the best defense they've seen all year. And we see the limitations against the Eagles. We see the limitation actually twice against the Ravens. This Chiefs defense is better. Now, a big thing we'll have to watch. Chris Jones went down with a calf injury, I believe. So with the Chiefs almost having the bye locked up, I mean, even if they lose to the Steelers, whoever they play in, I think they played Denver the last week, they could wrap up the bye. They could still wrap up the bye winning against Denver the following week. So they make rest Chris Jones, which would be a big help to the Steelers' offensive line. But either way, and the Chiefs are a little weak on the back end, but Steve Spagnuolo, I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. They got players. I mean, Chris Jones definitely would be a big loss, but definitely I wouldn't be expecting the Steelers' offense to really cook, especially without Pickens and with the way Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson cannot get Pat Freiermuth involved. But I think if you're the Steelers, you got to really just brush these last two games off and really focus, because if you really want to have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs and win a playoff game, not saying that if they're the 5th or 6th seed they can't win a playoff game, but you want to win this game. You want to try and secure the North and be a 3 or 4. Well, we'd be a 3 seed. You just want to win this game. But Santa, Jesus Christ, whoever you truly believe in, is gonna have to deliver a Christmas miracle, because Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are tough to beat, and Steve Spagnuolo as well. And Mike Tomlin in the games in the Patrick Mahomes era with Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin has not had any success against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So they got to hope some guys get healthy, add a little bit of Steeler bullshit and try and, save their season on Christmas, per se. Maybe that might be a little over dramatic, but a win here against Kansas City goes a long way. And I think to add on before I end this episode here, this little short episode, T.J. Watt, if you noticed today, I think this was a big factor. I don't know what his snap count was, but I'm pretty sure it was limited because his impact was not that great. Of course, he can't, as much as we think he's a Superman, he can't make a big play every game, but I would hope his snap count is less limited, because we know a weak spot for the Kansas City Chiefs is their tackles, right? If you have TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Preston Smith, that whole group getting to the quarterback, getting to Patrick Mahomes, the Steelers defense can have some success. And I think that's going to be a big key, especially if the secondary is still thin with, no Deshaun Elliott, no Porter, no Jackson, whoever may be out. So, and we know how dangerous these weapons are for the Chiefs: Hollywood Brown, Worthy, and Hopkins. So that'll do it for me from the We Are Family Pittsburgh Sports Podcast. We'll have a couple of videos coming out here shortly, and hopefully the Steelers could get a Christmas miracle. We hope you all have a happy and healthy holiday season.